MDFCs are back. With Modern Horizons 3 spoilers almost complete, we have a new cycle of dual-colored modal double-face cards available to us. And as well, there are single-color cards added to the mix. So what these lands do is that there are spells on one side here and lands on the other. And as you can see, this will allow players to increase the number of lands in their commander decks. According to EDHREC, or Magic Data Science, the average land count in an EDHREC deck is 36. I don't know if that's as of 2023, so that number may have changed. But 36 is a little bit low because that equates to 14 lands in a 40-card deck or 21 in a 60-card deck. Typically, in those formats, in a draft environment with 40 cards, you want about 17 lands roughly in that deck. So players are underplaying lands. You should be playing probably a little bit more. So what these will do, these MDFCs, these will allow you to play spells and lands. So it's fun in multiple ways. It's fun because, for example, Bridgeworks Battle here, you can see this is a fight spell on the front side and a land on the back side. And this is the cycle of bolt lands. So it ETBs tapped unless you pay 3 life. So a bolt land. The other examples here are for example, Blood-Soaked Insight. This is a Rakdos-colored spell that gives you a cool effect on the front side, and then on the back side, it's a tapped dual Rakdos land. These are very utilitarian and will really help players build better decks unintentionally. And Wizards is kind of tricking players into building properly. And so just to reiterate, modal double face cards, that's MDFCs. These are either face can be played from the hand. So you can play a spell on one side or the land on the other. That's what the MDFC is. And as you can see, there are articles written. These will affect other formats as well. You can pitch them to the new Ugin land, for example, Ugin's Labyrinth. You can pitch the new Drowner of Truth to that. So that's like a great utility piece there. I don't know if it's good enough for that format, but that's a great example. Waterlogged Teachings might be playable in that format. Again, this is mostly a commander channel. But as you can see, the MDFCs are great utility lands. And so the question is, how do these compare to the original MDFCs from Zendikar Rising? And as you can see, the top cards on Zendikar Rising EDHREC are all MDFCs almost. There's Feed the Swarm at the top. Then you have Bala Geta Recovery, Malakir Rebirth, Valakut Awakening. Then you have the dual lands. The MDFC like lands. These are interesting. I actually prefer the spell lands over the land lands, but these are an interesting design space. Seagate Restoration is next. Then you have some more of the land, the MDFCs. You have Agatheme's Awakening. You have Shatter Skull Smashing. The Mythic Cycle was all very powerful. So these lands are really almost ubiquitous in a lot of decks. Bala Geta Recovery is in 10%, 184,000 EDHREC decks. Malakir Rebirth, 9%. Like, that's a huge number. And as I've said before in previous videos, anything over like 3% is massive. So these cards have seen a lot of play in EDH decks. There's another cycle of lands in the Modern Horizons set these are kind of utility lands with activated abilities that you can meet a criteria with Shifting Woodland with Delirium. Spymaster's Vault gives something Connive, and then the other two have been roughly translated. This one gives Improvise, and the white one is the Monumental Henge. So these do utilitarian things, but the thing with this is that I actually prefer the MDFCs over these utility lands in many cases. Now, there's counterexamples. Glasswing Grace here. This one's a little bit medium. 5 mana for this effect is not super great. But if you don't mind a lot of tap lands, I think they are pretty good. My personal favorites from the new cycle here, let's just lay them out here. So they're all lands on the back, right? My personal favorite is Witch Enchanter. This one is very strong. It's an ETB, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And so this one's very utility right here. Stump Stomp, this is a removal spell. Let's see, anything that's a removal spell or a tempo spell like Sink into Stupor. Revitalizing Repass, this is similar to Malakir Rebirth right here. So Malakir Rebirth is similar to that. This one is double color, which is great. Razor Grass Ambush. Legion Leadership is pseudo removal, not quite. Fel the Profane is similar to Hagra Mauling. But yeah, as you can see, these cards have a lot of utility on them. And, they might not be as flashy as the rare cycles, but I think that they are not quite on par with the Neon Dynasty cycle. So, like, this is an example here. Boseiju Who Endures is just an absurd land. Like I've mentioned it before, but this Odawara, Takenuma, and Aganjo especially are all like pretty much auto includes in any deck that contains those colors. And so Sokenzen is kind of the runt of the litter, but these lands here are even more ubiquitous, I would argue, than MDFCs, because MDFCs do have a downside on the back. The land will enter tapped unless you pay life, or it just enters tapped no matter what. And so there's an argument to be made that we could be veering a little bit too much into utility lands that are way too strong. Now, the upside here with the MDFCs is you can play the land on the backside. So you play, for example, Sanguine Morass, and then you play a bounce land. Let's just say you play Arid Archway. You bounce it back, cast a spell. There you go. It's pretty great. You can also do this with the Neon Dynasty lands as well. So bounce lands work pretty well with the MDFCs. Probably don't play Temple of the False God if you're playing all those. Yeah, and so these lands are not going to be as ubiquitous as a card like Command Tower or Exotic Orchard. So I don't think we have to worry about that. The question is, are we going to get to a critical mass where nobody plays basics anymore? So we already have Urza's Saga, Scavenger Grounds, Field of the Dead, Strip Mine, Hall of Helios Generosity, Academy Ruins, Minas Tirith, and those are just a few examples of lands that are like kind of auto-includes in their respective decks. Like you have artifacts, you want this, enchantments, you want this, and so on. And so I'm just really in favor of the MDFCs here. I think that these are super powerful and that Wizards should continue to print them, maybe not every year, but every couple of years or so, just to give players more options and more utility in their commander decks. Now, one thing I'd like to avoid is the Strixhaven pitfall of having wordy cards on both sides of the card, and especially changing the colors of the cards here. So this is a little bit confusing to some EDH players because you're like, wait, is this green or is it black? It's actually, it's both. It's green and black color identity. And so there's a new Ajani in Modern Horizons that has this too. And there's, one of the, I think Avacyn has a card like that. These cards here are kind of an issue because, for example, Plarg, Dean of Chaos, right? This card it has like 8 lines of text on the front side, a bunch on the back side. There's another one that's even worse, I think. Here we go. Uvilda, Dean of Perfection. Like this one is just crazy. Ton of lines of text on this, ton of lines of text on the Sari, and they kind of don't work directly with each other. And it's like, what is going on with this card? Like you see, oh, the other side's a 5-mana shaman. I wonder what that does. Oh God, I have to read it 10 times. So this is kind of the pitfall I would like to avoid too much of. The Wizards does. I love the land MDFCs here. It's very simple. You have a spell in the front, land on the back. Very simple. Great. Goes in a lot of decks. I think it adds utility without adding way too much power, which I feel that Boseiju and the other lands here might add a little bit too much power and utility. And so these types of lands, in my opinion, should be minimized, while the MDFC lands should be should be printed a little bit more often. So yeah, what do you guys think in the audience? Do you think that MDFCs are good for Magic? Are we going to veer a little bit too much into like a Hearthstone style where it's like, oh, you always hit your land drops, lands are no longer a strategic choice? So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.